book today is Snowflake Bentley and is written by Jacqueline Briggs Martin and illustrated by Mary Azarian. And you may be looking at this book going, why is Mrs. Upley reading this? It is spring and I am hoping that there is no more snow. But the reason I'm reading this is because he is one of the first ones to use a camera for some scientific research. And also, we are talking about photography and scrapbooks and memory books in our social studies unit. So I thought photos, it all fits in. So check out his old-time camera and you will find this book fascinating, actually. It starts when this guy was young. In the days when farmers worked with ox and sled and cut the dark with lantern light, there lived a boy who loved snow more than anything else in the world. Willie Bentley's happiest days were on snowstorm days. He watched snowflakes fall on his mittens, on the dried grass of Vermont farm fields, on the dark metal handle of the barn door. He said snow was as beautiful as butterflies or apple blossoms. And over here it says William Bentley was born February 9th, 1865 on a farm in Jericho, Vermont, between Lake Champlain and Mount Mansfield, in the heart of the snow belt, where the annual snowfall is about 120 inches. So it's a good thing he liked snow, because he was going to get it whether he liked it or not. He could net butterflies and show them to his older brother, Charlie. He could pick apple blossoms and take them to his mother, but he could not share snowflakes because he could not save them. Willie's mother was his teacher until he was 14 years old. He attended school for only a few years. She had a set of encyclopedias, Willie said. I read them all. Encyclopedias are kind of like the written form of Google. So if, like back when I was a child, there were encyclopedias also. I am not as old as this guy, but encyclopedias were a thing back then. And you could read in there about many subjects. And so Google is kind of like an online set of encyclopedias. When his mother gave him an old microscope, he used it to look at flowers, raindrops, and blades of grass. Best of all, he used it to look at snow. While other children built forts and pelted snowballs at roosting crows, Willie was catching single snowflakes. Day after stormy day, he studied the ice crystals. From his boyhood on, he studied all forms of moisture. He kept a record of the weather and did many experiments with raindrops. Isn't that fascinating that he could put it under the microscope and it would stay in the frozen state while he could examine it? Their intricate patterns were even more beautiful than he had imagined. He expected to find whole flakes that were the same, that were copies of each other, but he never did. Willie decided he must find a way to save snowflakes so others could see their wonderful designs. For 3 winters, he tried drawing snow crystals. They always melted before he could finish. He learned that most crystals had 6 branches, although a few had 3. For each snowflake, the 6 branches were alike. I found that snowflakes were masterpieces of design, he said. No one design was ever repeated. When a snowflake melted, just that much beauty was gone, without leaving any record behind. Starting at age 15, he drew hundreds of snow crystals each winter for 3 winters. So do you see his drawings here? But they would melt so fast that he couldn't finish drawing. When he was 16, Willie read of a camera with its own microscope. If I had that camera, I could photograph snowflakes, he told his mother. Willie's mother knew he would not be happy until he could share what he had seen. Fussing with snow is just foolishness, his father said. Still, he loved his son. When Willie was 17, his parents spent their savings and bought the camera. Oh, they loved him so much. That is so awesome. So, we'll find out what he does with that camera on the next pages. Pages are sticking together. The camera made images on large glass negatives. In its microscope could magnify a tiny crystal from 64 to 3,600 times its actual size. It was taller than a newborn calf and cost as much as his father's herd of 10 cows. Willie was sure it was the best of all cameras. Check that out. Right now we have cameras on our phones, but look how big they were back then. And this one magnified things also too. It made it bigger. Remember the magnifying glasses we have at school? Where you hold it over top of something and then it looks bigger underneath? And that's what this camera did too. I'm going to read it right here first. Willie's experiment. He used a very small lens opening which let only a little light reach the negative. But he kept the lens open for several seconds, up to a minute and a half. He learned, too, that he could make the snow crystals show up more clearly by using a sharp knife to cut away all the dark parts of the negative around the crystals. This etching meant extra hours of work for each photograph, but Willie didn't mind. Even so, his first pictures were failures, no better than shadows. Yet he would not quit. Mistake by mistake, snowflake by snowflake, Willie worked through every storm. Winter ended, the snow melted, and he had no good pictures. He waited for another season of snow. One day, in the second winter, he tried a new experiment, and it worked. Willie had figured out how to photograph snowflakes. Now everyone can see the great beauty in a tiny crystal. That is a lot of work to get pictures of snowflakes. But in those days, no one cared. Neighbors laughed at the idea of photographing snow. Snow in Vermont is as common as dirt, they said. We don't need pictures. Willie said the photographs would be his gift to the world. While other farmers sat by the fire or rode to town with horse and sleigh, Willie studied snowstorms. He stood at the shed door and held out a black tray to catch the snowflakes. Everybody has their own hobby, and this was his, and it was a scientific one. When he found only jumbled broken crystals, he brushed the tray clean with a turkey feather and held it out again. He waited hours for just the right crystal and didn't notice the cold. If the shed were warm, the snow would melt. If he breathed on the black tray, the snow would melt. If he twitched a muscle as he held the snow crystal on the long wooden pick, the snowflake would break. He had to work fast or the snowflake would evaporate before he could slide it into place and take its picture. Some winters he was able to take only a few dozen good pictures. Some winters he made hundreds. He learned that each snowflake begins as a speck, much too tiny to be seen. Little bits, molecules of water attached to the speck to form its branches. As the crystal grows, the branches come together and trap small quantities of air. Many things affect the way these crystal branches grow. A little more cold, a bit less wind, or a bit more moisture will mean different shaped branches. Willie said that was why, in all his pictures, he never found two snowflakes alike. The best snowstorm of his life occurred on Valentine's Day in 1928. He made over 100 photographs during the 2-day storm. He called the storm a gift from King Winter. I think I would be cold, very cold. But he must have wore many layers and stayed warm and took all those awesome photographs. But his snow crystal pictures were always his favorites. He gave copies away or sold them for a few cents. He made special pictures as gifts for birthdays. He held evening slideshows on the lawns of his friends. Children and adults sat on the grass and watched while Willie projected his slides onto a sheet hung over a clothesline. Many colleges and universities bought lantern slide copies of his photographs and added to their collection each year. Artists and designers used the photographs to inspire their own work. So pretty. And that's how they had to do it back then. They didn't have a smart TV like we have in our classroom or a projector like they have upstairs. They didn't have those. Or they didn't have a smart board either. And they used these things, and this was called a slide projector, I think. They used those back then. Even today, those who want to learn about snow crystals begin with Wilson Bentley's book, Snow Crystals. Ooh, you're going to hear about his book over here, too. He wrote about snow and published his pictures in magazines. He gave speeches about snow to faraway scholars and neighborhood watchers. "You are doing great work," a professor from Wisconsin said. A little farmer came to be known as the world's expert on snow, the Snowflake Man, but he never grew rich. He spent every penny on his pictures. Willie said there were treasures in snow. "I can't afford to miss a single snowstorm," he told a friend. "I never know when I will find some wonderful prize." Other scientists raised money so Willie could gather his best photographs in a book. When he was 66 years old, Willie's book, His Gift to the World, was published. Still, he was not ready to quit. In 1926, he spent $15,000 on his work and received $4,000 from the sale of photographs and slides. So it was kind of a labor of love. He loved to do it, and it didn't make him much money, but it made him happy. And the pages are stuck together again. Less than a month after turning the first page on his book, Willie walked 6 miles home in a blizzard to take more pictures. He became ill with pneumonia after that walk and died 2 weeks later. Aww. He loved snow so much he wanted to get home so that he could take pictures of that snow. And you couldn't carry your camera with you back then like you can now. A monument was built for Willie in the center of town. The boys and girls who had been his neighbors grew up and told their sons and daughters the story of the man who loved snow. 40 years after Wilson Bentley's death, children in his village worked to set up a museum in honor of the farmer scientist, and his book has taken the delicate snow crystals that once blew across Vermont, past mountains, over the earth. Neighbors and strangers have come to know of the icy wonders that land on their own mittens, thanks to Snowflake Bentley. The plaque on the monument says, "Snowflake Bentley, Jericho's most famous snowflake authority. For 50 years, Wilson A. Bentley, a simple farmer, developed his technique of microphotography to reveal the world of the grandeur and mystery of the snowflake, its universal hexagonal shape, and its infinite number of lovely designs." And so that sign is in the center of town. And this is an actual photo of him and some of his actual pictures. And I'll read what it says here. "The average dairy farmer gets up at dawn because he has to go to work in the cow yard. I get up at dawn too, but it is because I want to find some leaf hung with dew, or a spider web which the dew has made into the most delicate ropes of pearl. I take my camera with me, get down on my knees in the wet grass, and photograph these exquisite bits of nature. Because I do this, I can show these lovely things to people who never would have seen them without my help. They will get their daily quart of milk all right. Other farmers will attend to that, but I think I am giving them something which is just as important." Check out the pictures of the snowflakes on there. Aren't they beautiful? So, photographs can be used to create memories, or they can be used for science, like in this book. But photographs are a good way to keep a memory also.